Welcome to the world of science fiction where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The crash had not been gentle. Elias Vance groaned as he pulled himself free from the wreckage of his ship, coughing against the smoke curling from the shattered hull. His head throbbed, and his limbs ached, but he was alive. The planet stretched before him, a vast, untamed wilderness bathed in the glow of two moons hanging low in the sky. The air was thick but breathable, laced with the scent of unfamiliar flora. Elias checked his gear, finding his emergency pack mostly intact. His communicator, however, was useless. The ship's distress beacon had fired before impact, but there was no telling if anyone had received it. He could be stranded for days, weeks, maybe forever. As he surveyed the area, a rustling in the undergrowth snapped his attention to the tree line. He reached for his sidearm, heart pounding, but what emerged was no predator. It was a woman, or at least something close to one. She was tall, with deep blue skin that shimmered under the moonlight, and dark markings ran in elegant patterns across her arms and face. Her clothes were woven from strange fibers, adorned with beads and feathers. But what struck Elias most was her condition. She was injured. A gash ran along her side, dark fluid seeping into the fabric of her tunic. She staggered before collapsing into the grass. Without thinking, Elias rushed to her side. He hesitated, unsure if his touch would be unwelcome, but her shallow breathing told him she needed help. Gently, he lifted her, careful not to jostle the wound. She was lighter than expected, her form delicate despite her height. He carried her back to his makeshift shelter near the wreckage. The emergency kit had basic medical supplies, but he had no idea if human treatment would work on her. He cleaned the wound, wrapping it in sterile bandages, and watched as her breathing steadied. The strange markings on her skin pulsed faintly, but he assumed it was some natural biological response. Hours passed. Elias sat nearby, studying her features in the dim firelight. Who was she? What species did she belong to? Had she been alone? Questions swirled in his mind, but exhaustion soon claimed him, and he drifted into uneasy sleep. The next morning, Elias awoke to find her watching him. Her gaze was steady, unreadable, but not fearful. She sat upright, fingers grazing the bandages he had placed on her wound. When their eyes met, something passed between them, an unspoken understanding. She spoke first, her voice melodic, but filled with words he couldn't comprehend. Elias shook his head slightly, gesturing to his ears and mouth in a universal sign of misunderstanding. She tilted her head, considering, before touching her chest lightly and saying, "Siravel." He repeated the name hesitantly. "Siravel." A smile ghosted across her lips. Then she gestured toward him, waiting. "Elias," he said, tapping his own chest. She mimicked the name, nodding in apparent satisfaction. The exchange felt simple, yet profound. Two beings from different worlds, trying to bridge the gulf between them. Over the next hours, she observed him carefully. Elias tried to offer food from his rations, but she declined, instead pulling a small ornate vial from a pouch at her waist. She dabbed a drop onto her tongue, and the markings on her skin flared briefly before fading. That night, as he sat by the fire, she moved closer. She placed a hand over his, her skin warm against his own. Elias stiffened, uncertain, but she did not pull away. Instead, she whispered something soft and rhythmic, almost like a chant. The flames flickered strangely, casting shifting patterns in the darkness. Elias didn't understand it then, not fully, but what he thought was a gesture of gratitude was something far more significant. In her culture, in the eyes of her people, Elias had unknowingly performed an ancient rite, a ritual of binding. And by morning, his fate was sealed. The warmth of the fire flickered across Eric's face as he sat across from Silara, the alien woman he had unknowingly brought into his home. The silence between them was thick with unspoken questions. Outside, the storm raged on, its howling winds a stark contrast to the stillness inside. Eric had spent the last few hours tending to Silara, who now sat wrapped in one of his blankets. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed gently, a rhythmic glow that he had begun to associate with her breathing. She was calming down, though her golden eyes still watched him with intense curiosity. "You really don't understand what you've done, do you?" Silara finally said, breaking the silence. Eric exhaled and leaned back against the wooden support beam of his small cabin. "You keep saying that. Why don't you just tell me?" Silara hesitated, her fingers tightening around the fabric of the blanket. Then, with a deep breath, she began. "On my world, what you did, bringing me into your home, tending to me, it's more than just an act of kindness." She paused, searching for the right words. "It's a ritual, a bond." Eric frowned, trying to make sense of her words. "A bond? What do you mean?" She glanced away, as if ashamed. "To take in someone injured, to shelter them, to offer them your own warmth. It's part of our species' ancient traditions. It signifies a deep commitment." She hesitated, then looked back at him, her golden eyes unwavering. "It's a marriage ritual." Eric's breath caught in his throat. "Wait, what?" Silara sighed, shifting in her seat. "It's more symbolic now than it used to be, but the meaning hasn't changed. In our culture, when someone is at their most vulnerable and another willingly cares for them, it is seen as an unbreakable bond." Eric rubbed his temples. "So, you're saying that by helping you, I accidentally married you?" Silara's bioluminescent markings pulsed a soft blue. "Essentially, yes." Silence filled the cabin as the weight of her words settled in. The crackling fire was the only sound between them. Eric took a deep breath. "Okay, let's just slow down for a second. There's got to be a way to undo this, right?" Silara's lips pressed together in thought. "Not easily." Eric groaned. "Of course not." Silara studied him for a moment before her expression softened. "You are different from what I expected." Eric scoffed. "Yeah, well, I wasn't exactly expecting to get married today either." Silara chuckled, the sound light and melodic. "You don't seem like a warrior, yet you took me in without hesitation." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Why would I need to be a warrior?" Silara's expression grew serious. "Because if word of this bond spreads, others of my kind will come for you, and they will not be as kind as I am." Eric's stomach tightened. "What do you mean, come for me?" Silara's bioluminescent markings shifted to a deep orange, a sign of warning. "My people will not accept this bond. They will see you as an unworthy outsider, and they may try to take me back by force." Eric's jaw clenched. He had just wanted to help a stranded traveler. He hadn't planned on getting involved in some kind of intergalactic conflict. But looking at Silara, at the worry in her eyes, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't about to let anyone take her against her will. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a decision had been made. Eric sat in stunned silence as Silara's warning echoed in his mind. His cabin, once a place of solitude and peace, now felt like the eye of a coming storm. He had only tried to help a stranger, yet in doing so, he had unknowingly tied his fate to an alien culture he barely understood. He ran a hand through his hair. "So let me get this straight. Because I took you in, your people think we're married. And if they find out, they're going to come after me." Silara nodded solemnly. "Yes. Not all of them, but the ruling caste will see it as a violation of our customs. They will assume you manipulated me, that you forced the bond." Eric frowned. "That doesn't even make sense. You were hurt. I helped. How is that manipulation?" Silara sighed. "Because in our history, weaker civilizations have tried to claim members of my kind before, either as trophies or for their own advantage. The ruling caste does not take such things lightly." Eric exhaled, leaning back against the wooden wall. "Great, just great. So what do we do now?" Silara studied him for a moment before answering. "We have two choices. One, I leave now and try to disappear before my people track me. That way, They will never know you were involved. Eric's gut clenched at the thought. Something about the idea of her vanishing into the unknown unsettled him. And the second choice. Silara's bioluminescent markings pulsed softly. We stand together. We prepare for the possibility that my people will come. And we fight, if necessary. Eric let out a hollow laugh. Fight. Against an advanced alien species. That sounds like a death wish. Silara's gaze was unwavering. Not necessarily. If we can prove our bond is genuine, they may reconsider. But that means we must act as if the bond is real. In every way. Eric swallowed hard. You mean, pretend we're actually married? Silara tilted her head. In a way, yes. The bond is not just a contract. It is something that is felt, something that is seen in the way two people act toward one another. If they sense doubt, they will know. And then, they will take me away. Eric's heart pounded. This was insane. A few hours ago, he had been living a quiet life in his secluded home. Now he was being asked to convince an alien civilization that he was in a committed relationship with someone he had just met. But then he looked at Silara. Despite everything, she wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. Eric let out a long breath. All right. If it means keeping you safe, we'll make them believe it. A ghost of a smile touched Silara's lips. Then we begin now. She moved closer, reaching out to take his hand. Her skin was warmer than he expected, the soft glow of her bioluminescence illuminating the space between them. In my culture, a bond is reinforced through shared experiences, she explained. Stories, gestures, physical closeness, it all matters. Eric hesitated before clasping her hand in his. Guess we better start practicing then. Outside, the storm began to die down. But a greater storm was on the horizon, one they would have to face together. The morning came with an eerie silence. The storm had passed, but the tension between Eric and Silara remained. They had spent the night discussing what their next steps should be. But now, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the window, a heavier realization settled over them. Eric stretched, his muscles sore from a restless night. Silara stood by the window, her bioluminescent markings faintly glowing in the dim morning light. She had barely slept, her mind undoubtedly running through every possible outcome of their situation. We should start preparing, she said, her voice carrying a sense of urgency. Eric rubbed his face. And how exactly do we prepare for convincing an alien civilization that we're bonded? Silara turned to him, her expression serious. By understanding what they look for in a true bond. Eric sighed. All right, give me the crash course. Silara sat down across from him. In my culture, a bond is not simply declared, it is demonstrated. A true pair shares trust, shared experiences, and above all, unshakable loyalty. The ruling caste will observe how we interact. If they see doubt, hesitation, or unfamiliarity, they will know the bond is false. Eric frowned. So, what? We have to act like we've been together for years. Silara hesitated. Not years, but we must show a connection that is beyond the surface. We must know each other's habits, stories, and instincts. If we don't, they will take me away. Or worse. The weight of her words hung between them. Eric leaned forward. Then we better get to know each other fast. Silara's expression softened. Agreed. A test of trust. The first part of their bonding training involved personal questions. Silara was fascinated by Eric's past, how humans formed attachments, and how they expressed love. Eric, on the other hand, was trying to wrap his head around the complexity of Silara's species. So let me get this straight, Eric said, leaning back in his chair. Your people don't choose their mates based on emotions first. Correct, Silara said. Attraction and compatibility are biological factors, but the emotional connection forms later. However, once a bond is established, it is considered unbreakable. Eric smirked. Guess that means divorce isn't a thing in your world, huh? Silara tilted her head. Divorce. You know, when two people break up, go their separate ways. Silara looked genuinely perplexed. Why would a bonded pair separate? Eric chuckled. Because people change. Sometimes they realize they weren't meant to be together. Silara's markings flickered as she processed his words. That is strange to me. In our culture, once a bond is forged, it is final. Even death does not sever it. The memory of the bond lives on. Eric exhaled. Well, no pressure, then. Silara offered a small smile. It is not as dire as it sounds. When a bond is true, it is a source of strength, not confinement. Unwelcome visitors. Their conversation was interrupted by a low, rumbling sound outside. Eric tensed, standing up and peering through the window. His heart dropped. A sleek, dark vessel had landed just beyond the tree line. Its surface pulsed with an eerie blue light, and as the hatch opened, figures in metallic armor stepped out. Silara's expression darkened. They found us. Eric grabbed his rifle. You said we just had to convince them, right? What happens if we fail? Silara's voice was quiet, but firm. Then they will take me, and they will eliminate you. Eric felt a surge of defiance. He wasn't about to let that happen. He turned to Silara. Then we better put on a convincing show. She nodded. Follow my lead. As the armored figures approached the cabin, Eric took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. The air outside the cabin was thick with tension. The armored figures moved with eerie precision, their dark, metallic suits reflecting the dim morning light. Eric could count at least 5 of them, all equipped with weapons that hummed with an energy far beyond human technology. Silara stepped forward, her glowing markings intensifying as she took a deep breath. Eric followed beside her, his grip tight on his rifle, though he knew that if things went wrong, it wouldn't do much against their advanced weaponry. The tallest of the armored figures stepped forward, his helmet retracting with a hiss, revealing a sharp, angular face with piercing silver eyes. His expression was unreadable as he looked between Eric and Silara. Silara of the Varnari, the figure said, his voice like a blade scraping over metal. You have violated the protocols of our people. The High Council demands your return at once. Silara's hand clenched at her side, but she remained composed. I have done no such thing. I have bonded. By our own laws, you have no authority to separate me from my mate. The alien's silver eyes flicked to Eric, cold and assessing. You claim to be bonded to this human. Eric met the alien's gaze without flinching. Yeah, that's right. And if you know anything about humans, you know we don't take kindly to people trying to break up our relationships. The other soldiers shifted slightly, clearly uncertain about how to proceed. The leader, however, remained unfazed. Then prove it, he said simply. A bond under scrutiny. Silara turned to Eric, her expression steady but her eyes pleading. This was it. Their final test. If they failed to convince them, Silara would be taken, and Eric, well, he doubted they'd let him live to talk about it. Eric took a deep breath, stepping closer to Silara. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it, her skin warm against his. He could feel the faint pulse of her bioluminescence beneath his fingertips. This bond is real, Eric said firmly. You want proof. Look at her. Look at me. You think I'd risk my life for a lie? The alien commander narrowed his eyes. Words are meaningless. A true bond is felt, not spoken. Silara exhaled sharply. Then feel it. Before Eric could react, she turned to him and placed both hands on his face. A strange warmth spread through him, like an electric current running just beneath his skin. His vision blurred for a moment, and suddenly it was as if he could feel Silara, not just physically, but emotionally. Memories, thoughts, emotions, hers and his, intertwined in a rush of sensation. He felt her fear, her desperation, her hope. And beneath it all, he felt something else, something deep and unspoken. Silara loved him. And in that moment, he knew, he felt, he loved her too. The connection broke as she pulled away, and Eric staggered slightly, breathless. Silara's markings pulsed in rhythm with his own racing heart. The alien commander took a step back, clearly shaken. His soldiers murmured amongst themselves. "This is..." The commander's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering across his face. Silara straightened. "You have your proof." The commander hesitated, then nodded. "The bond is true." He turned to his soldiers. "We have no claim here. Stand down." The armored figures lowered their weapons, stepping back toward their ship. The commander gave Silara one last look. "Do not make us regret this." With that, he turned and boarded the vessel. Within moments, the ship was rising into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. A new beginning. Silence settled over the cabin. Eric exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Well, that was something. Silara turned to him, searching his face. "You saw it, didn't you?" Eric nodded. "Yeah, I did." She hesitated. "And?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out, brushing a strand of her silver-blue hair behind her ear. "And I guess I better make sure we don't regret it either." A soft, relieved smile spread across Silara's lips. For the first time since this whole ordeal had begun, the future didn't seem so uncertain anymore. For the first time, Eric realized he had found something worth fighting for. And he wasn't letting go. The end.